Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino. And today I have a special guest. His name is Darrell Jefferson. Hey, Darrell, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Cesar. Thank you for having me on your show today, man.
Yeah, definitely. Before we dive in, I want to give our listeners and viewers a little bit of your background so they can kind of get to know you. So Mr. Darrell Jefferson is the owner and operator of RELL Millions LLC. His humble beginnings exhibit his life as a celebrated and dedicated firefighter of Chicago, Illinois, with aspirations to extract his dreams into reality in such a method. He will be capable of teaching others to follow his monumental examples into their own success. His consulting firm assists small businesses with what he calls an invasion of the financial industry. When coaching by the usage of his method, he aims to assist other potential business owners with the acquisition of funding by leveraging their personal business credit while also creating passive streams of income. Wow, that's pretty awesome. And you know, I always like the idea of how people are starting in a particular industry and then they dive into something that they're passionate about. Before we get into that though, tell me more about your upbringing. Where were you born? How was that for you in terms of your childhood?
Well, I was born on the west side of Chicago, Illinois, back in the 80s. I'm an 80s baby. But growing up, man, it was beautiful, man. Growing up on the west side, it was like the city of Chicago around that time. We had really good mayors in the place, Mayor Daley, and we had a lot of good mayors, Mayor Harold Washington. So the city, just growing up, I would constantly see, flourishing, people around me. I grew up in a kind of an environment where it was a mixed environment. It wasn't like I had the perfect house setting, but at the same time, I had a good one. My mother was a single parent, never met my father before. But prior to that, man, growing up in Chicago, it was always a hustle. Everybody was always doing something to make some money, whether they were selling the candy at the candy store on the corner, whether it was somebody selling freeze pops, whether it was somebody selling pickles in a bag, whatever it was, people were doing what they had to do to hustle. But the main thing that I realized as growing up was that it was a lot of violence and it was a lot of poverty. As a kid, your parents, your family, they kind of hide you from that. But at the same time, it was prominent. I was hanging out with a group of guys. My mom used to tell me, be careful who you hang around. The guys seemed like some really good guys. We playing basketball all the time at the court. At one time, one of the guys came around the corner from the library, from the basketball court, and he had a pair of shoes. And he said, yeah, man, I had to get the shoes from the guy, man. He had my shoes. And I'm like, uh-oh. I found out it was a group of gang members. So when my mother found out, my mother said, hey, you can't go out past the street lights. When the street lights come on, you bring your butt in the house. So I had a really good upbringing, man, really good family. My aunt Lindy McCarthy was one of the top people at DePaul University for the African-American program that they had. I had another aunt who was in charge of Northwestern University's African-American program, Deborah McCarthy. And my mother, Lisa Brooks, she hustled her butt off. My grandfather was a famous radio personality in Chicago with a radio station called WVON. His name was the Wolfman back in the, I want to say around the late 60s. But, I had an entrepreneurial kind of, gene in there. It was always kind of pushed to me that my mother told me to get recession-proof jobs. She said, whatever you do, she said, son, I don't want you to have to work for anybody. She said, I want you to be able to work for yourself. So, you know, that stuck with me. And when I got, you know, kind of older, that's where my mindset was to be a boss and to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and that's actually pretty awesome. I mean, you normally hear the other side of the story, which, by the way, is there's nothing wrong with that. Except I know, growing up, a lot of times parents said, "Hey, you know, go to school, get a good education, and then go find a good job, and then kind of stay there, right?" And that's more or less the, I guess, the typical story that you will hear from time to time, all over the place, right? And again, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, except we are living in a different era, and I totally agree that at the end of the day, you definitely want to be able to be your own boss. Going back to your childhood, I'm just curious. You mentioned, you know, your dad was not on the picture. Did that do anything for you? Because I know a lot of people that might be listening to the show, they might have you know, been in the same situation where they've never met their dad, and sometimes I was talking to somebody else, and they had mentioned how that could have really impacted them in their life in a very you know, how you want to say, either positive or negative way, just because there was not that father figure, right? Obviously your mom was both your mom and your dad. Yet that did that do anything for you in any shape or form?
Well, see, I had a very particular story. The person who I was actually named after was supposed to be my father, but he wasn't. My my mother was with my, I guess, the person who was supposed to be my dad, but he wasn't, and he had a drug addiction, and in the time my mother, you know, he was in the dope house, and my mom was trying to fend for us, so you know, I guess she slipped up in the time frame, and the person I'm actually named after, Darrell Jefferson, he, you know, he really wasn't in my life growing up until probably around like 2005. And I actually met him when I was a mailman working at 19, and he became the president of the Chicago Transit Authority, their union. So he was a pretty prominent man, and we kept a relationship probably for like a couple of years. In my older years, though, you know, I didn't really have a relationship with him growing up. But growing up, man, it was kind of crazy because, you know, like, you know, people telling you that, you know, you're such a good kid, you're well mannered, and then to tell them that I didn't have a father and it was my mom, you know, they were like, wow, they were really impressed. But my mother passed about 4 years ago, and she was an awesome woman, man. So she, I actually helped birth the entrepreneurial spirit in her, and she ended up using a couple of network marketing companies and got pretty high up in those companies. So, you know, growing up, we just had a good time, man. Life was good, you know. You know, I didn't have everything, but I had what I needed, you know.
Right. Now with the idea and the spirit of, you know, go become your own boss, be an entrepreneur. How was that like for you getting out after high school, in terms of, you know, did you kind of, I mean, as you were a firefighter, so at one point you had that in you. And so how was that? I mean, did you say, you know, I'm going to just kind of venture into working for the fire department or some sort of, you know, company? And then at which point did you decided to kind of have your own practice?
So it all started when I was probably around 14. And my stepdad, he used to have clippers in his cabinet. And it was 8th grade dance. I went to the barber. The barber had my lining lopsided. One side was up here, one side was low. So I went in and I used my stepdad's trimmers, and I got caught. And he told me, he said, hey, if you ever want to use my clippers, let me know. So my entrepreneurial spirit started really young. I started cutting hair in the high school, and then the guys in my school would see, you know, they asked, hey, who cut your hair? Who cut your hair? And, you know, once I told them that it was me, then that's when it just kind of just opened up the floodgates for that entrepreneur spirit. And, you know, my mom, she would come in and she would be seeing all these kids coming in and out of the house. And you know, the day that she really knew that I had skills, because she would always get on me about the hair that was left and, you know, sweeping up the hair, my stepdad. So from there, she came in the house and I was cutting one of my Caucasian basketball teammates. And from there, she was like, wow, you really have a skill. You know, because most barbers, man, they're only, you know, versed in their, you know, their gene pool, the people that are around them in their community where they grow up. So for me, that was the start of it. But coming out of high school, I ended up going to Northern Illinois University, and I was one of the top 100 recruits back in 2003. So I went up there to walk on, and when I walked on, I was playing football, tried to make it to the practices, but I was cutting so much hair. I cut everybody on the campus there, the fraternity, some of my teachers, the basketball team, the football team. I was really popular for cutting hair. So that football net kind of just left when, you know, the guys would go to the dances and I wouldn't go to the dances because I had so many clients. But when everybody came back from the parties, I was the one who had all the money.
Yeah.
So, you know, the spirit, the entrepreneur spirit, it started young. It hasn't always been like peachy keen. It hasn't always been, you know, smiles and high fives. Once I dropped out of college, because college wasn't for me. You know, I was there, I was making so much money that it was just like, it just didn't add up. And I had a paper, and the paper that I had to write was called, they said, write a paper about something that you're passionate in. And I wrote the paper. It was called Northern Illinois, a School or a Bank. And I wrote that paper, I want to say probably about an hour before class. I ended up getting a B on the paper. And after I wrote that paper, it let me know that if I stayed in college, I would always just be an employee. I would always just be working for someone. And from there, I came home when I dropped out of school, and my mom and my aunt, they sat me down and they asked me, they said, okay, so what are your plans? I said, I want to be a barber. And from there, they said, well, do you like school? And I said, nobody likes school. What do you mean? And from there, that's when my aunt told me, she says, well, that's not true. She says, I have two master's degrees. I'm on my way to get a doctorate. Your mother has her associates. Your aunt has a bachelor's. Your other uncle has. There are some people who do like school. But what they asked me was, what do you like? And then from there, they asked me, what do you want to do? And what do you want to be? And I told them that at the time I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to open a franchise of barber colleges and barber schools all around the world. And from there, I actually created a brand for myself, which is called the Razor brand. And I will eventually be launching that clipper company in the barber school. I have my barber's license, my barber instructor's license. I probably taught for about close to over 11 years, teaching how to cut hair. So, you know, the transition from there, once I went to barber college, once I dropped out of college, I went to barber college. But in barber college, you aren't really making that money like that. You're servicing to get your license. So cutting hair here and there. My mother used to manage Silla's on the west side of Chicago for people who were, you know, who would have like deficiencies and things like that, mentally challenged. And I would go there and I would cut all the men's hair. So they would line up all the men in all 11 of the houses, and I would go just take a whole Sunday and just cut their hair. And that's how I got my cutting speed. So I would just cut their hair. And, you know, it really wasn't paying for barber college the way that I needed it to. So I ended up getting a job as a mail carrier part-time. And I got that job through my stepdad. So my stepdad helped me out with that job. And while I was working the job, I was making so much money that I started to kind of veer away from the barbering. But I ended up working in a barber shop. And when I worked in the barber shop, you know, I wasn't going to school as much, you know, being a mailman. But while I was a mailman, one day I was on the dock and it was late night. You know, everybody was closing out. It was one of those cold nights where we were out delivering mail at like 8 o'clock at night. And one of the guys, his name was Fred, he walked past, and it was like a scene in a movie. He was whistling, and he was like, you know, he had his mail keys that came on a chain with the key on them. He was just kind of swinging them. And then he looked at me, he said, hey, young man, you got anything else you can do in this life besides wear this monkey suit? And at that time I told him, I said, you know, I'm a barber. And he told me, he said, man, go pursue that. Go be a barber. Don't get caught up being an old man. And I ended up working this job and letting the job get the best of you. So I went on the workers floor and I looked and I saw all of these old guys. They would finish their routes around 11 a.m. and they would go to the floor and they just drink Jack all day. And I said to myself, I don't want this for my life. Right. So, you know, that for me, that's when I quit the post office and I went full head of steam in the barber college. Ended up going to a school in Richmond Park, Illinois called Ultimate Touch Barber College. I think now it's called Phipps Barber Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And my transition with that school was even difficult being an entrepreneur. When I got there, you know, most of the guys there were either felons or had been in the streets. And, you know, it was one night we were all leaving out and I was telling the guys like, hey, you know, I already knew how to cut hair. So with me already knowing how to cut hair, it was a little easier for me. And I was a student of the game. Anytime I usually learned something, I obsess over it. So I would obsess and I would watch the instructor, Mr. Phipps. I would watch him cut hair for hours and hours and hours. And from there, from me watching him cut hair for so many hours, you know, I really started to look into other things in the barbering industry, seeing that he had a school and he had a candy store and he had this and he had that. But the guys that were there strictly just to learn how to cut hair. So one night, you know, we were all talking and the guy said, hey, man, only thing we can do is cut hair. That's all we got. And I told him, I said, we can do more than cut hair. I said, we can be owners. We can have our own clippers. We can have our own, it's other things to do. And I told him about the hair shows and all of that. And the guys told me, they said, look, man, for a black man in Chicago, the only thing you can do is work at McDonald's, sell drugs, or cut hair.
Wow.
And, you know, it was always been that stride. Even with me being in the fire department, it was the same thing once I left there as well.
So there was a lot of that. I don't know if I should consider that discrimination, yet more a lot of that distinguishing between one race to another and limiting the opportunities. You know, did you see a lot of that, you know, in anything you did?
In the fire department, or do you just mean in general?
Overall, in general.
In general, you know, I think that back in the day, I think opportunities were cut short because of the lack of knowledge to be able to get those jobs. And, you know, back in, you know, the 90s and the late 2000s, I mean, early 2000s, it was more so like who you know, with jobs, who you know, and they had a lot of nepotism and, you know, friends and things like that. So I think those challenges did come in, and if you were an African-American and you probably didn't have some type of a play in there or someone that was a brown person. I think that was kind of like, it really depended on, you know, who you knew and most definitely your
talking about, you know, becoming a barber and kind of, you know, going after that and even pushing through to having that, what I believe, that belief, right? That certainty that I want to be that. It reminds me of Steve Harvey talking about his barber before he got started. His barber was charging whatever $10-15 to cut his hair, Steve's hair. Yeah. And then he ended up growing to, I think at one point now, he will bring the guy to his studio before he won't go on air. And now he was charging $1,000. So there's definitely, I guess the point to that is there's definitely passion. When you have a passion for something, there's definitely money to be made in anything that you do. It doesn't really matter what it is. It just really comes down to not giving up and pushing forward, right? So it reminds me of that.
Yeah, with him charging an amount, in anything you do, you got to charge your work. You know, when I was a barber, I got into being a celebrity barber. I cut a couple celebrities. And, you know, once you get to that place where you are like a barber and you can demand that type of price, you can charge whatever you want. A lot of my buddies are like some of the top barbers in the industry who cut a lot of top celebrities. I cut a couple guys myself.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you know, one thing to kind of relate to that you were talking about here is one of your major obstacles to overcome is really betting on yourself, right? And not worrying about any of your jobs and realizing that you were just another number, yet making you the priority and realizing that you had this worth and using your job to help you get to where you wanted to get to, right? And I think that's very critical. A lot of times we forget our value, our worth. We forget to understand that, hey, I'm gonna go in it 100%. Regardless of the odds. And so I want you to elaborate more on that, because I think that many people that are listening to us, you know, they might be on that fence line of, you know, did I take this risk? Did I bet on myself? Or like Steve Harvey will say, you got to jump. Did I jump and know that my parachute is not going to open? You know, tell me more about that, because obviously you've gone through a lot of those things.
Well, with that, with the whole like betting on myself thing, being a Chicago fireman, man, it was one of the best jobs I've ever had in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing that really stood out to me and it jumped out to me that kind of stood out was just another number. Because, one day you could be with a guy, the next day he's dead. The next day he's out with a serious injury. The next day he's caught COVID. The next day he's had a heart attack. The next day, it was always something. And, early in my earlier firefighting career, I worked over in the Beverly area and
Okay.
the Beverly area of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a lot of older retired firemen. And these guys had only been off the job for between 5 to maybe maximum 15 years. And they would be on like respirators and breathing machines, and they could barely walk. And when you see them, like, they look so old and just beat up. And I didn't want that for my life, and one of my close lieutenants, one of my close captains, excuse me, he passed away. His name was Darrell Moore. And Captain Moore, he was with me from being in the beginning of my job all the way until whenever I needed him for anything. And sometimes he would just call me and say, "What's up, boy?" And he just called me just to check on me. So having those deaths, especially with another guy, Juan, Bucio, who just passed a little while ago. Another guy just died like early December. And the young man who passed in early December, he actually came to my firehouse as a rookie to do his riding time, for his ambulance hours as an EMT. And he had such a wonderful spirit. He was so humble. He was so nice, and he was full of energy. And to know that my life could be gone like that, it really changed some things for me. And one day I was at work. It was back last I want to say March, and I was at work, and we had 3 fires back to back. And it was in the time where I had started getting into credit repair, learning about lines of credit, and I was helping a lot of people at the time. And I had 3 fires. And the phone call I missed the phone call while we were at a fire, and I missed about $12,000 that day.
Wow.
And that for me, man, was just like I was making more money on my passion of what I was learning to do, which I hadn't even mastered at the time, than what I was doing with my work. And it was more of in the fire department, we always talked about a risk versus reward factor. And I looked at the risk versus reward, and what my mother told me when I first got on the job as a fireman. She said, "Son, the fire department in the city of Chicago don't deserve your life." And at that time, I really didn't think about it like that. I just thought, I'm securing for my children. I got my 2 sons, Sean and Cameron. I'm making sure they got health insurance. As a barber, you working 12, 14 hours a day sometimes. It gave me time. And I knew that time was going to allow me to do 2 things as an entrepreneur. It would give me time to think, time to work, time to be with my family, and it would stop having me to exchange so many time for dollars. When you exchange time for dollars, you're always going to lose. And when I took the job as a fireman, I wanted my time back. So I would work 24 hours on, 48 hours off, working about 80-something days a year. It was amazing. So it gave me time to do the other things that I needed to do to be able to embark on my new career.
Right. Yeah. No, that's actually, I like that risk versus reward factor, and definitely evaluating that in anything that we do in our lives. Tell me about RELL Millions LLC. How did it come about, and what did the idea come about? Your consulting business.
RELL Millions, man. Majority of my life, I was known as Razor Rel because of my barbering. So, I jumped back on social media. And when I was on Instagram, I was really disconnected because people just post so much random stuff. And I just thought, man, if I'm going to be on this platform, how can I use this to my advantage where I can, start leveraging it to be able to, get my name out there, help other people, show them what I'm doing. Because at the time, I was just showing everyone that were following me, who are my friends and family, the success that I was getting from doing my credit repair, searching about businesses, learning about how to structure a business. And the millions part came when I thought about it like, man, what am I going for? What's my goal right now? You know, and how can I make it so that people, when they think of me, you know, it rings a bell, and the millions is what rang the bell. It'll change to the billions
Yeah, yeah,
one day, hopefully
yeah.
soon. Yep.
No, that's awesome, man. And so, what kind of people work with you? Is it individuals, business owners, or both?
It, it ranges from people from all ages.
Okay.
Because I am in credit repair
Yep.
and business structuring, and you know, I consult people on how to leverage their business and their personal credit to be able to get to financial freedom.
Mm.
And it's all ages. I mean, I have clients that are 18 who follow me. I got clients that are 16 who say, "Hey, Rel, what can I do to be like you? I see the credit is important. My parents are always talking about how their credit isn't so good, and they tell me to get good credit." I even got individuals who are retired
Mm.
who I've met when I was in Miami at the Fountain Blue.
Mhm.
I met a couple there who were from Baltimore. And no, not take that back, Detroit.
Mhm.
And he just asked, he was just like, man, what can I do? You know, I'm retiring. You know, I'm thinking about stepping away from my job, but I'm looking at all of these guys on social media who are younger and older, and they're living the life that they want to live. And you know, these guys and these people and these ladies and these children, they all want to get to one thing, which is security and financial freedom. So I help people who are very affluent people. You know, you can never have too much money. I help people who only have $500 to their name, and it doesn't matter where you start. It's all about starting, and that's why one of the things that I say all the time is it's not about where you start. It's about how you finish. So
Right.
I had to start somewhere. My mentors had to start somewhere. And I started reading books and getting as much knowledge as I can to be able to have every scenario that I can in my head. So if someone says, "Hey, Rel, I need 100,000, but my credit is in the 500s, what can I do?" The first thing I'm going to tell them is, hey, what is your debt to income ratio? How is your credit card debt? Check your credit report. Make sure that there aren't any inaccuracies on your report. There are certain things that sometimes creditors put on your report that by law, with consumer laws, they cannot disclose information without your consent. And those are laws. Like they have different laws for inquiries and collections, like 15 USC 1681N. That's one of the consumer laws. And that law is basically on the behalf of the consumer, stating that you cannot disclose any information from the creditor and the consumer to put on their report without their consent. And, you know, a lot of guys use this whole identity fraud thing, and you know, people are getting caught up from that. That's not the proper way to go about repairing and structuring your credit. You got to do it the right way, because one thing that I was always taught is that whatever happens in the dark comes to the light. So if you do it right the first time and you structure your personal credit, your business credit all out the right way, that's where you can get those funds. So it could be anybody, man. Fresh out of high school.
Yeah.
I teach my kids. My sons are 12 and 14. They know each credit bureau. They know credit scores. They know all of that type of stuff.
Yeah. And you know, and that's actually pretty awesome. You know, if as growing up, right, you know, a lot of people don't have those parents that can either teach them about credit or even about money. Like, you know, obviously you go to college and they don't talk to you about, you know, how to manage your money or how to make more money. They're just tell you certain things, right? And when you have somebody that can help you and teach you those things, definitely you have a better future ahead of you. One thing that I'm curious is, obviously you've worked and you've grew up with this entrepreneurial mindset. You've started with many different things. You've done many different businesses here and there. What do you do to keep your mind? I know you talked about reading, and I'm thinking that's more reading on the industry standards. Well, what about reading anything else, or what else do you do to keep you ahead in terms of a positive mindset?
You know, it's funny that you said that, because the whole time you were talking, all I just kept popping in my head was mindset, mindset, mindset. Mindset is the most important thing. And mindset is not just about the business. It's about the personal life. It's about your spiritual life. It's about your routines.
Mm.
It's about how you attack the day. It's about how you brainwash yourself to knowing that success is your duty and your obligation, just like Grant Cardone says in 10X. So it's not only about reading books, like you said. It's about just habits. Like for me, I had to create habits. Going from waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning to go to the firehouse, and then going to sleep for a day straight, and then waking back up to get ready to go to work. I had to learn how to create habits for myself. And the habits that I created, I gave myself a actual schedule. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm realistic to actually what I'm actually capable of doing and what I want to do. So in the morning, I know I take about, first thing I do is I got a rollover routine. When I roll over a certain way. When I wake up in the morning, I say thank you. I'm not a super religious guy, but I'm a spiritual person. Well, I have a foundation. Right. So with that being said, I constantly write down affirmations. I put affirmations certain places, like on my phone screen. When I go to my notes, I take lots of notes. Anytime that I talk to someone or talk to anybody that's someone that can add some meat to my head, I write it down and I put it in my notes. And when I do have those times where I feel like, I may be slipping, I refer back to what one of my mentors told me in a mentorship call. The young man's name was Les Brown. And Les Brown told me, he said, I want you to go read Unstuck. I want you to go watch my video Unstuck. And when Les Brown told me to check out Unstuck, I took at least 2 pages of notes for Unstuck. And it helped me to be able to take that negative energy of feeling like, okay, I've done this, what's next? Or, this isn't working, what do I do? Or, patience, because, we always get those points where we feel like if we're not doing anything that, we're not, entrepreneurs, how what's the value? Right. So I read Unstuck, and one of the main things of what Unstuck taught me was that the way that you're able to get out of the negativity or the mindset of something isn't working for you is to be able to go and help someone else. So I took a lot of the knowledge that I already had, and I applied it by helping other individuals who actually needed some help. And that's where I started with the mentorship program, and I started with my weekly mentorship calls. And when I did that, I was able to not only give myself the patience that I needed, and I cultivated a community of like-minded individuals where we were able to bounce off ideas. Everything's not always up. We know that. There's a middle point, there's a low point, there's a high point. It's all an emotional roller coaster as being an entrepreneur. Yeah. So in those times, I just really focus, and I give myself a plan, and I just get to it. And whenever I feel like I'm slipping, I just start it right back over again, and I just keep going, and I fine tune here and there.
Yeah, I love that. And talking about Les Brown, one thing that I like about Les Brown, he mentions that if you do what is easy, your life will be hard. If you do what is hard, your life will be easy. And when I think about that, it definitely relates to many different things, right? It is easy for us to be lazy, to sit on the couch, to do all these different things. It is hard for us to, eat the healthy food, or to read, or to stay up late working on our business, right? Yet again, when you start taking that journey, and again, I definitely love what he says. It's because it's true. When you look at it from that perspective, long term, you're gonna be where you want to be. Yeah. So, if people want to connect with you, find you, how they can connect and find you?
Best way to find me is on Instagram. I'm on Instagram all day long. I got a pretty big following there. At RELL _millions. You can find me there. That's the best way to find me. If not, you can follow you can hit me on email, rellmillions850@gmail.com. I'm always available. You can find me on Facebook, RELL Millions, Darrell Jefferson. That's the best way to find me. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And my last question for you is, for the people that are listening to us and or are watching us, if they're going through any kind of challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what are some advices you can give us so they can start overcoming that challenge?
Main thing that I can tell them is to believe in themselves. You got all the answers that you need inside of you. One time I called my mom for advice about 3 years ago. No, sorry, I take that back. About 5 years ago. And she said, "Rel," she said, "you got all the answers. You just wanted me to agree with you. You just wanted to hear somebody tell you. So you got everything you need inside of your mind." The most successful people, they only take advice from other successful people and people who've done it. So as long as you've done your due diligence, believe in yourself, and execute the plan.
Yeah, I definitely love that. That's definitely a golden nugget, because a lot of times we don't believe in ourselves. We actually talk ourselves out of doing something great, right? And so that's actually amazing.
That's the number one thing, bro. That's the number one thing, Caesar. Belief, that faith. You know, the Bible says have a faith of a mustard seed. You don't even need that much. It could be lower than that, just as long as you believe that you can do it. And you know, life is like a video game to me, man. It's all about having the right cheat codes.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly, right. No, I love that. And kind of going back to that too, like, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we are here today and we are gone tomorrow. So we got to be able to do the best we can today at this moment and just believe that we can make it happen. So definitely, I definitely appreciate that, Darrell. Anything else that you want to say before I let you go?
To any entrepreneurs out there, I definitely can help you guys if you're looking for funding. If you got $5,000, we can find funding for you. There are a lot of different tools and things you can use to be able to get yourself out of those situations and find funding quicker than most. They have things that are trade lines that you can add to your credit, business trade lines. You use authorized user trade lines. If you want an exotic car, you can get auto trade lines, and you can add those to your credit to be able to give you that leverage that you need to be able to go and get the funding within 45 to 60 days or get that car. So just look for good resources, people who have social proof, people who actually prove things to you. Find someone who has done it, duplicate what they do, and you'll be extremely successful. YouTube is one way, but finding a mentor, finding someone who's actually succeeded at this, find the very best person that does what they do and what you want to do in their niche, and follow them, duplicate the process.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Awesome, Darrell. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate having you on the show today.
Appreciate you too, bro. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. For the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Make sure you guys follow him on Instagram, Facebook, and just connect with him. If you can definitely use his services, please reach out to him. Do me a favor, share this message because somebody needs to hear this message. And I'll see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Goodbye.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.